Well, good. I worked fast enough. I know I skipped quite a bit of material, but your summaries are showing me that you're reading this stuff and thinking about what Dr. Dobson says, and I appreciate that. But I want to start on page 405 with question 477. It's not really a question, it's just a comment. But here's what this person says. I'm glad to hear you talk about the need for Christians to be caring and compassionate to homosexuals and lesbians. I think many of my church friends are homophobic and cruel to those who have these tendencies. And Dr. Dobson answers by saying, let me say again, every human being is entitled to respect and acceptance, including those who are caught in the grip of sin. Now, as soon as he said that, what does that make him? By the modern definition of homophobic. By the way the word is used. If he calls homosexuality sin, then that makes him what? Homophobic? Doesn't it? I mean, isn't that the way the word's used today? That if you're critical of the homosexual lifestyle, if you say something negative about it, then aren't you labeled homophobic? Yes or no? Are you? Okay. So what he just said, the person who wrote that, if they really buy into that word homophobic, they say, oh no, Dr. Dobson's homophobic. And he's not. You say, what do you mean he's not? Okay, do any of you have any phobias? Does anyone in this room suffer from claustrophobia? Anyone know what that is? Have you ever stepped onto an elevator to go 10 floors up in a building and start feeling a little fearful because it's such a small space? Oh, you've never been on a small elevator in a foreign country. You need to travel overseas to go visit somebody who lives on the 15th floor of a huge high-rise, and the elevator has enough room for about 3 people. And you get on there, and 2 other people get on there, and if your heart starts to race and you're going, I'm a little uncomfortable here, you might have a little bit of claustrophobia. Do any of you have arachnophobia? Anyone know what that is? What is it?
Isn't that the spider?
A fear of spiders. Now, if you see a spider, okay, if some of you see a spider on the floor, what do? You do what? What did you say, Talitha?
I said I kill it.
I kill it. Did everybody hear that? Did you people online hear that? This lovely lady in the back of the room with this huge smile on her face says if she sees a spider, she kills it. Now, do you have arachnophobia?
No.
I just hate spiders.
Well, if he's inside and he's in my space, if he's like doing his own thing outside, I'll let him live.
But if he's in your house, in your space, he dies.
Maybe. Unless he looks nice, then I'll set him free.
Because, and see, it's like, okay, I don't have arachnophobia. I mean, if there was a person in a room with arachnophobia, if there was a spider on the floor, that person would say, Talitha, kill it. And they would be up on the table going bonkers because they have such a fear of spiders. So that's what a phobia is by definition. But understand that there's a new word in your vocabulary that didn't used to exist. I have a dictionary, a Webster's dictionary published in 1970 in my closet here so I can look up words when I need to look something up. And it happens, got you, Karis, it happens that the word homophobia or homophobic is not in the 1970s Webster's dictionary. Because the word didn't exist prior to that. It was first used in a public address, in a public forum, in about 1970. And today, it's basically take on the connotation that if you, when on page 405, when Dr. Dobson says, let me say again, every human being is entitled to respect and acceptance. So I'm saying, so he respects and he accepts homosexuals even if they're caught in the grip of sin. And as soon as he says they're caught in the grip of sin, the homosexual community says Dobson is homophobic. In fact, guess what? Any religious person who thinks homosexuality is wrong is labeled homophobic. Which means if you think adultery is wrong, that would make you what? Adulterophobic. If you think pornography is wrong, that would make you pornophobic. You follow me? You follow the way the word's being used today. But see, so I want to do two things. I want to convey to you what Dr. Dobson says on page 405 about respecting and accepting people, even if they're caught in the grip of sin. But I must emphasize that while we're expressing compassion to homosexuals as individuals, we are morally obligated to call sin by its name and to oppose the radical agenda of the gay rights movement. What activists are trying to accomplish in the culture is wrong, and it must be resisted. And that agenda includes, and so he says, here's what's wrong. That agenda includes pro-homosexual concepts in the public schools, redefining the family to represent any circle of people who love each other, approval of homosexual adoption, legitimizing same-sex marriage, and securing special rights for those who identify themselves as gay. Those ideas must be opposed, even though to do so is to expose oneself to the charge of being homophobic. And that's the charge that'll be made against you. And you can't change that. Our culture's not going to change. But let me show you something. Just first, maybe I should show you this one. I just went to Google. You can do this at home. Oh, I better turn it on so you can see it. Sorry about that. You can do this at home. Just Google phobias. And then it says an overview. And what is a phobia? It's an irrational fear of something that's unlikely to cause harm. You say, well, then I'm not arachnophobic because spiders can cause harm. Oh, there's a couple of them that can harm you, but most of them aren't going to hurt you. But you're just scared of all of them. So, and understand, they kill bugs too. But it comes from the Greek word phobia, which means a fear or a horror. Hydrophobia literally translates to a fear of water. You understand what a phobia is? Now watch this. I'm going to scroll down. I think it talks in here about somebody did some research and they found, I forget how many words, up in the thousands of them. Then they said, here's a common list of phobias. Acrophobia, a fear of heights. Arachnophobia, a fear of spiders. Claustrophobia, a fear of confined spaces. Can you see all those up there? Are they big enough where you can read them? The people online, just go Google phobias if you can't see it on the camera, and you can see all these. Zoophobia is a fear of animals. Then some unique phobias. Electorophobia, a fear of chickens. Nephophobia, a fear of clouds. The sum of all fears so far. So there they are. All the A's, You could just look through all these fears and find them. All the B's. Look at this bibliophobia, a fear of books. I mean, I'm thinking somebody needs to go to the library once in a while and read something. No, books just scare me to death. Although there are a bunch of people who have a phobia against the Bible, don't they? In our world today. An irrational fear of what the Bible has to say. But see, they use the word biblio. I say, well, that would be bibliophobia. No, that would be Holy Bible phobia. Or scriptophobia, scripture phobia. What's C? See if we can find the C that we like in here. Fear of mirrors. Yeah, I'm afraid of a mirror. No, I just don't like what I see in it. Okay, so you see, I don't like what I see, but I'm not afraid of it. You understand? You separate those two as to what you approve of. Chromophobia, a fear of, chronometrophobia, a fear of clocks. You ever walk in a room and hear a clock ticking and you just have to leave because it just scares you to death, just terrifies you? Say, no. But if I walk in a room, when our granddaughter came to live with us, when she came to school here, her parents were missionaries over in Russia, we had this old, any of you have some grandparents with an old clock that goes tick tock real loud? She said, Poppy, can you not wind that clock? Can you turn that clock off? It keeps me awake at night. I'm going, oh, it does? That tick tock kind of puts me to sleep. Well, it keeps me awake. I said, yeah, we'll turn it off. Yes?
Is it talking about like the freaky cat ones though that used to be manufactured? Because my great grandma had one of those like with the big eyes that are like going.
Oh, yeah. It's like
kind of freaky.
You say, and I'm not afraid of it. I just don't like it. You know, I suppose you could have a fear of some of that. But so let's move down here to D. No, we've got a lot of stuff to cover. Let's move down to F and G, H. Now, what am I looking for under H? What word am I looking for? Homophobia? Why isn't homophobia listed here?
Because it's not a fear to them.
Because there's no such thing as homophobia. In terms of the list of fears, you ready for that? In other words, have you ever encountered a person who, when they're told that somebody is homosexual, they say, I just can't work here anymore. I just have to get out of here. I just can't be around them. It just terrifies me. Have any of you ever met someone like that? Have you met someone like that who's actually fearful of homosexualities? Mm-hmm. Or do they say, I just don't like them?
No, they're actually like scared.
They actually have now, if they hate them, that's a different thing. That's a hatred for somebody. I mean, if you hate spiders, you go around finding spiders and killing them, right? But if you were really afraid of them, you wouldn't go finding them. You'd stay away from them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there are people who just hate homosexuals, and that's a hatred for them. And I don't know if there maybe ought to be another word out there that we use for it. But it's not homophobic. In other words, in the list of phobias, you don't find homophobic in that list. So, where do you find it? Well, let's minimize this one, and let's go click on another one. And what I Googled here was, where did the word homophobia come from? And there it is. Can you read that? You can Google this too. It was coined by George Weinberg, a psychologist in the late 60s. It's a blend of the word homosexual and phobia from the Greek word meaning fear. So he came up with a new word. And really what he was talking about was people who, well, let's see what he was saying. Wernberg is credited as the first person to have used the term in a speech. The word homophobia first appeared in print in an article written for the May 23 issue in 1969 of the American Pornographic Magazine, in which the word was used to refer to heterosexual men's fear that others might think they are gay. So he said, a person who's afraid that someone might think they're gay is homophobic. Now see, if you were in the room, knowing what you know about word definitions, wouldn't you want to say to him, no, if they're afraid of someone thinking they're gay, if they just don't want to be identified with them, that's simply a dislike. Okay, I go to an elevator to get on it to go up to the 15th floor of a high-rise building, and there's a whole bunch of people standing there, and they all get on the elevator and say, come on, there's room for one more. And I say, no thank you, I'll wait for the next one. Why do I say that? Because I don't like crowded small places. You must be claustrophobic. You follow that? No, I'm not claustrophobic. If I was claustrophobic, I wouldn't get on the elevator even if it was empty. So I just don't like riding in a crowded elevator. The thought of closing the door and all of these people using up all the oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide with all the stuff that comes with it out of their bodies and me breathing it in is a bit uncomfortable. You go, I'm thinking maybe you're a bit phobic about this stuff. No, if I was, I wouldn't get on there. But if a friend was with me and he said, no, come on, they can squeeze you in, I would get on there with him. And I wouldn't panic and I wouldn't go bonkers. I would just ride the elevator and then hope I didn't pick up any germs while I was there. Oh, maybe I'm a little germophobic. In other words, you see where we use that word to describe things where you have these irrational fears of stuff. But this is the first time it was used, and it was used for people who said, I don't want someone to think that I'm homosexual. Conceptualizing anti-LGBT prejudice as a social problem worthy of scholarly attention was not new. It had been addressed before, it just hadn't been labeled homophobia. Phobia about homosexuals was a fear of homosexuals which seemed to be associated with a fear of contagion, a fear of reducing the things one fought for, home and family. It was a religious fear that it had led to great brutality, as fear always does. So that was the definition of homophobia. People who dislike homosexuality enough to treat it in a negative fashion. So if you're going to kill spiders, then I'm going to say by this usage, I would say you're arachnophobic. And the people who study phobias would say, no, she's not arachnophobic. And then they would say, I'll show you someone who's arachnophobic. You follow what I'm talking about? Is that you have to understand the technical definition of phobia, there is no such thing as homophobia. But the social definition that's being used by the homosexual community is that if you don't approve of my lifestyle, if you disagree with me, that makes you homophobic. And they've been able to use that word and throw it around and get a lot of mileage out of it. And I'm thinking if the homosexual community can use it, then what group of people today seem to scare a lot of people? Christians? So if you don't like Christians and you don't want them to be hired by your company, then that makes you what? Christian phobic. But you don't see that word floating around but technically you could have all kinds of phobias. Well, has Islamic phobia popped up anywhere? Because people just have this discomfort level with a Muslim in the community. So the word's starting to expand to take other usages, and we'll see where it goes. But understand that the original use of that word had to do with just, and this is a whole bunch of stuff in here in this article that talks about religions. Christians and Muslims historically have not approved. There it is, Christians in the Bible. So because Christians and Muslims and their holy books have not approved of homosexuality, that makes Christians and Muslims homophobic by their definition, by Weinberg's definition, and by and not only that, but by the definition used by people in the world today. So now I'm not going to get my homosexual friends to quit using that word by just taking them to these word studies, but I want you to understand where all this stuff comes from. And then over here, number 479, what's the responsibility of the person who wants to live? Let me turn this off. What's the responsibility on page 407 of the person who wants to live a Christian life but struggles with a deeply ingrained attraction to members of his or her own sex? And here's Dr. Dobson's answer. If I interpret Scripture properly, persons with homosexual inclinations have the same obligation as heterosexual single adults. They're required to refrain from immoral sexual behavior. I understand the implications of this position, and I'm not being glib about the issue. It's far easier to write about purity than it is to live by it day by day, but I didn't make the rules. I can only report the standard of behavior given to us in Scripture. So basically, a person with inclinations to be promiscuous or to do things that the Bible would say are outside the bounds of appropriate sexual behavior, it doesn't matter whether it's an attraction to another man's wife. If they follow through with that attraction, it's called adultery. It doesn't matter if it's a single person attracted to another single person. If they follow through, it's called promiscuity in the Bible. I mean, the Bible has words for all this stuff. And it just simply says, and it's outside the bounds of what God intended. And that's also true for homosexuals. So I like the way Dr. Dobson handles this, but you can be assured that the homosexual community thinks he's a terrible person. And probably if they saw this tape, they would also think that I'm a terrible person for taking a biblical stand on moral issues. Okay, number 4. Wait a minute, what am I doing here? Page 423. How come it says number 1? 423. What did I just do here? Oh, we're on the last chapter. And on the last chapter, he starts, here's what this last chapter says on page 423. I think this last chapter is so cool. It says, principles and concepts drawn from Dr. Dobson's books. So if you don't like reading books, just take this last chapter out of his book and say, he's extracted books and statements through the years and put them all in this one chapter. And the first one I want to talk about is number 1. I concluded, now these are just things that Dr. Dobson says that I think are so cool. Dr. Dobson says, I've concluded that the accumulation of wealth, even if I could achieve it, is an insufficient reason for living. When I reach the end of my days, a moment or two from now, I must look backward on something more meaningful than the pursuit of houses and lands and machines and stocks and bonds. Nor is fame of any lasting benefit. I'll consider my earthly existence to have been wasted unless I recall a loving family, a consistent investment in the lives of other people, and an earnest attempt to serve the God who made me. Nothing else makes sense. Is that a cool statement? And then he tells us where it comes from. What wives wish their husbands knew about women. Okay, when I was new into the teaching profession, I went to a teacher's convention, and Dr. Dobson was the keynote speaker, and he had a table of his books back there. And this was the first time in my life I had actually been separated from my wife, that I went someplace where she stayed home with the girls with our children, where I went someplace for like 4 or 5 days. I just had never been away from her. And I thought, you know what? I bet it would be neat if I called Nina and said, Nina, I thought about you here at this teacher's convention, and I went back to Dr. Dobson's table and bought a book. So I went back to his table. Don't you think that would be neat if I called my wife and told her that she made me think about buying a book? And so I went back to his table, and there was that book, What Wives Wish Their Husbands Knew About Women. And I went up there and bought one. That's all I need, is a book on what wives wish their husbands knew about women. And I went to my room that night, and I just read the whole book. I called Nina and told her I bought it and I was going to read it. She said, oh, that's so neat, Tom. And then I thought, well, now that I told her I'm going to read it, I better read it. So I just read the whole thing. And I made notes in it. And when I got home, I said, Nina, what about this? Is this really true? Do women think this way? And now, can you tell my tone of voice when I said, do women think this way? What am I expecting her to say as an intelligent, college-educated person? No, that's just some nutcase from down the road who thinks like that. And guess what my wife said to every one of my questions? What do you think she said? Yes, Tom. Yes. I go, what? And I'm going, why do you guys think like that? And she goes, why do you always have to figure everything out? Why can't you just accept some things in life and say, that's just the way it is? I'm going, ah! So I said, you know what? I think I could enhance my relationship to my best friend in life by trying to take some of these principles, especially the ones that I checked off that I was going to ask Nina about, and she said, yes, he's right on. And I'll work on those and see if I can improve our relationship. Do you think it improved my relationship with my wife to do that? Yes, it did. And one time, I saw Dr. Dobson somewhere, and I said to him, I want to thank you for that book. I told him what I did. And he said, I'll never forget this. He said, you know, he said, this is interesting. I wrote that book for men, but guess who buys most of the copies? Who? Women. And what do they do with it? If they already know what's in it, why are they buying the book?
Give it to their husband.
To do what?
Give it to the men.
To give to their husbands. To try to get these guys to figure it out. Oh, ladies, you have a hard, down in Oklahoma Needs, it would be you have a hard row to hoe. You've got a lot of work ahead of you helping us get it all together. Because what happens, guys, as soon as a girl says, hey, I bought a book that you need to read. Do you girls know how we react inside when you tell us you bought a book that we need to read? Oh, really? Well, thank you for caring so much. I just appreciate your thoughtfulness. What makes you think I need to read anything? Well, you're a very good specimen of the male half of the human race, but you have a few things you could work on. Like what? Whoa, guys, whoa, lighten up a little bit. We know we're not perfect. Yeah, we know we're not perfect. And it might be okay for us to point out each other's imperfections when we're at a men's retreat. But who's the last person on the world? See, this just amazes me. Who's the last person on earth that some man wants telling him what he needs to work on? His wife. The very person that God gave him to be his helpmate, to be his helper. Do you understand? We just have some inborn natural inclinations to drive into the ditch, to go the wrong way, to just mess up, instead of living in a way that's pleasing to God. So, guys, just swallow your pride, swallow that male stuff, and take all the help you can get. Number 6 was the second one that I circled. I mean, there's a ton of them here, but I only have so many to talk about. Number 6 on page 424, guard your family relationships against erosion as though you were defending your very lives. If you don't guard your family's relationships, if you're the father and the husband and the head of the family, I'm here to tell you, nobody else is going to be looking out for it. And if the wife says, the husband's not guarding these relationships, so I'm going to step up and do it, you understand why that doesn't work either? Because then she's trying to reverse the roles, and that doesn't work either. The men just have to step up and guard the family relationships. Number 18 on page 425. Be willing to let your child experience a reasonable amount of pain or inconvenience when he behaves irresponsibly. Sometimes, every time I read this, the same picture comes back to my mind. We had a rule at our house. Our daughter could ride her bicycle up and down the street, but she couldn't ride it around the block. And some of the neighbor kids were allowed to ride around the block. So I'm looking out the window one day and this was painful for her. She would ride her bicycle down to the end of the block, and all the neighbor kids would go around, turn the corner and go around the block. Then she would have to ride back up the hill and wait for them to come around the block, and then ride back down the hill with them again, and then stop because of the rule we had at our house. Because I was looking out for her welfare. I'm watching out the window one day to see how this is playing out, and she's doing a great job. And then all of a sudden, somebody said, "Oh, come on." I could hear him, "Oh, come on, your dad will never know." So she turns the corner on her bicycle. She finally gives in to the temptation. But when she turns the corner, okay, it's a gravel corner. When she turns the corner, what do children always wonder when they're getting to do something wrong? They look to see if the person who's supervising is watching, don't they? And you know, if all you have to do is just sit there, and if they look at you, you just go, "No, you don't want to do that." And they go, "What? I didn't do anything." And it's like, "No, but you were getting ready to. I could tell by checking the way you're checking me out." And so what happened is, as she turned the corner, she looked to see if I was watching. What happens if you look sideways while you're turning the corner on a bicycle? You crash. And sure enough, her bicycle flew out from under her, and she slid across that gravel and skinned her knee. And when she skinned her knee, have you ever skinned your knee on gravel? It hurts. I mean, it's terrible. And she goes, "Ah!" And the neighbors all came out. I said, "It's okay, it's okay. She just fell down and hurt her knee. She'll be all right." And I said, "Come on, get your bicycle and come on up here. Let's talk about what happened, and let's get this wound cleaned up." And my wife's going, "Well, she's hurt, Tom." And I said, "No, she just fell down and skinned her knee because she was starting to disobey the rule. She's suffering the natural consequences, some pain. So she's already learned her lesson." And when she got up there and we cleaned it all up and put some medicine on it to make it feel better, I said, "I'm so sorry you hurt that much." But I said, "We both know why that happened, don't we?" And her face got red. She goes, "Yes, Dad, I know why that happened." I said, "So, what did you learn from that?" I mean, you understand? You just have to let children experience a certain amount of pain. It'll help them remember to do the right thing. Number 22, the objective of parenting is to take the raw material with which our babies arrive on the earth and gradually mold them into mature, responsible, God-fearing adults. And look what book that came from. The New Dare to Discipline. He wrote Dare to Discipline, and so many people had a negative reaction about it. He wrote a second edition and called it The New Dare to Discipline. Number 26. Give your children an exposure to responsibility and work. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work. I'm going to teach these little kids how to work so when they grow up they can work like little beavers. That's only half of what he said. What's the other half of what he said on page 425? But preserve time for play and fun. So, do I teach them how to work? Yes. By doing what? By doing some hard work together. I grew up on a farm where there was all kinds of work to do, and I have to tell you, when I thought, boy, I'm raising these two daughters in the city, and how am I going to teach my two daughters how to work? And I thought, aha, my wife doesn't like leaves in the yard. I don't know why. Well, in Oklahoma, you don't have leaves in the yard. You don't have that many trees, and if you do have, the wind blows so much, it blows them all away. But I thought, if she doesn't like them, okay, we'll do something about that. So I have two daughters, so I guess what I do? I go out. Now see, my dad would have bought two rakes, one for each of the daughters, and then stood over there in the corner supervising while he's drinking a cup of tea or a coffee or whatever. And I said, no, I'm going to buy 3 rakes, and we're all going to go out there and rake leaves together. And we're raking these leaves up and putting them in bags, and they go, Dad, my back hurts. And I go, mine does too. And guess what? We'll get the rest as soon as we, get all the leaves raked up. And I taught them how to work hard by raking leaves. And then eventually, I got to the place where they decided they would rake the leaves on their own. Why would they tell me, you don't have to help us, we can do it ourselves? Oh, I made an arrangement with them. Because as they learned to work hard and be responsible, I said, you could make some money doing this. If I had to hire the neighbor kids to rake these leaves, here's what it would cost me. So why don't I just pay you girls? And this is what I said. You put the leaves in these big plastic bags or these big paper sacks. I'll pay you $1 a bag. And then you can split it. You each get 50 cents a bag. And I would go buy a bunch of bags and sit them out in the yard and let them rake the leaves and put them in the bags. And one day, I noticed they weren't packing the leaves down in the bag. They were just filling it up and sitting it over there. What did my little girls just figure out? If you're paid by the bag, the more bags the better. And I thought, that's called free enterprise in America. So I'll go ahead and pay them the money. Because, here's why. Did any of you get an allowance when you were younger? Okay, I didn't get an allowance, Jackson, just like you. If you want some money, what did your parents say? Get a job and earn some. If you want to buy something, go earn some money and buy it. And it was, and I felt like that was good for me to be that. It taught me something. And when I earned money, I could spend it any way I wanted to because it was my money. So I liked that concept. So I just said, hey, I'm not going to give my girls an allowance. I'll just give them opportunities to work and earn money, and then they can spend it any way they want. And I just think that there's something to be said for helping them learn to be responsible. Because if you were raised where you could spend your money any way you want to, all of us know that those of us who earned money when we were younger, we wasted some. But if you get the taste of wasting money early, then when you get older, you're a little more cautious with it. Karis?
What is the definition maybe for it seems like sometimes we do we did a lot of chores and we also got allowance, and so there were times when it was okay, we're doing these chores because we're earning money, but then there was also times where my mom would say, you just do this because you're part of our family.
That's
so I don't
exactly
know,
right.
I don't know what's what though.
And you know what? I think every parent has to say, I've got my list of things I pay them for, and I've got my list of things they do because they eat at my table. When I never paid the girls for doing the dishes. It's like, you don't want to do the dishes? Fine. We'll take the plate you eat off of and put it in the refrigerator. Then for the next meal, we'll pull it out and you can eat off that one again. Ooh, gross, they go. I'm saying, hey, You don't want to wash, I mean, that's part of it. We all wash dishes here because we all eat off the dishes. So some things were just things we do because we live here. Other things were things you could do to earn some money. And then, what does Dobson say, along with teaching them to be responsible and work, number 26 on 425, but also preserve time for play and fun. You know what else that means? That means when the girls bought Worlds of Fun season passes with the money they made from their garage sale in Peoria when we moved here, that means I bought 3 season passes to Worlds of Fun. One for each of my daughters, and what? And one for me, so I could go with them, not only to protect them and watch out for them, but so that I could share in their fun. I do not like amusement parks. I never have liked them. I still remember my first time on a roller coaster as a teenager. And I didn't know anything about them. All I knew were railroad tracks and trains. And this roller coaster was on a railroad track like thing. And my thought was, when I'm sitting in the back of that thing, and I'm thinking, we're going over the top of that with so much force, this thing has to be coming up off the rails. And I have no idea how, when it comes back down, it always lands on the rails. So every hill we went over just scared me to death. Then when I thought, well, it's not coming off the rails, and it's already been around this thing a number of times. How can that be? Then when we got to the end of it, I looked at it. I should have checked it out before I got on it, because what does a roller coaster have? A train has wheels on top of the tracks. A roller coaster has wheels on top and underneath. If I'd known that, I wouldn't have been near as frightened of that thing going up with that momentum. But see, I just didn't know it. And so once I knew it, I want to ride them some more. No, I've ridden them and they bounce you around and bang you around. And it's like, okay, I've ridden them, but I don't care for it. But why did I ride them? Because it says not only do you teach them to be responsible, you preserve time for play and fun. And that means they said, come on, Dad, get on here and ride with us. And I'd say, okay. I didn't ride the Zambezi Zinger, the little thing where it goes up on a wheel and you're flying around like that. I said, girls, there's only room for 2 people in there, fortunately. So I'll sit and watch you while you ride it. But the log flume, yeah, that's what I want to do. Be pulled up to the top of a hill, slide down the hill, and have water splash all over me. Oh, how much fun will that be? And the roller coasters. We rode together. And they had one thing up there, the Finnish fling. Now that's the dumbest ride ever. I don't know who thought that up. Some guy from Finland who wants to disrupt life in America. But the guy who thought that up, have you been on the Finnish fling? Okay, it's a big circle. Everybody stands against the wall and it starts spinning real fast. And then when it's spinning fast enough to hold all of you up against the wall, the floor drops. Yeah? Well, guess what? One time we're on the Finnish fling and there's a guy on the other side who weighed a lot more than anybody else on the Finnish fling. And if you're really heavy, it takes a lot more speed to hold you up against the wall. And guess what he starts doing when they drop on the floor? He's sliding down the wall. You should have seen the color of his face. He was just as white as a sheet. He thought he was going to die. And that was a short ride. The operator noticed what was going on and he shut it down and got us all off of there. And my daughter said, how come it didn't last very long, Dad? I said, did you see that guy over the other side? He was slipping down the wall. They were going to lose him. Whoa, they go, that would be terrible. I said, yes, it would. They need to up the speed. They need to have they almost need you to step on a scale and then have a machine that says this is how fast it has to go to keep this guy up against the wall. And they just thought that stuff was so cool. And why did I do it? Because if I'm going to teach my children to be responsible by having them work with me, I'm going to help them. I'm going to participate in their fun activities because it's just part of being a father. Just deal with it. Number 29, many confrontations can be avoided by building friendships with kids and thereby making them want to cooperate at home. Now, my first responsibility is to be a father who teaches them how to live the right way. But can I also be their friend? And I've heard people say, nope, the people who want to be their friends don't want to teach them responsibility. I said, well, some people don't. But I said, is it an either or choice? Can I be a father or a friend, or can I be both? Now, you have to work at being both, but is it possible to be in both? Okay, do we have a heavenly Father? And did he send his only son to this earth to die for us so that we could have a vital relationship with our heavenly Father? Jesus Christ is our Savior and he's our Lord. Is there any place in the Bible where it talks about Jesus Christ being our friend? We have a friend who what? Sticks closer than a brother. So I take from that, I'm going to develop this friendship thing too. Number 35 on page 426. Your contributions to your children and grandchildren could rank as your greatest accomplishments in life or your most oppressive failures. Hey, I was just watching my grandson wrestle earlier in the week out in Knob Noster. And I'm sitting next to one of his best friend's grandfather. And his best friend came up to his grandfather and said something. And he said, "Are you Casey's grandfather?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Thanks for those videos." Because I take videos when he pins somebody. I have his parents' email address. So I send a little video clip of him pinning someone to his. I mean, if I'm there taping my grandson, I might as well tape the other guys too. I mean, just something to do, keep me busy, hyperactive, kind of stuff. So and his grandfather says, "Wow." He goes, "We're going to be at his next meet in Raytown on Friday." But he said, "Then we're leaving to go to Arizona where we spend the winter. So we're not going to be able to watch him wrestle." And he said, "I'll be at your meet on Friday, but then he said, then we're going to Arizona, so I won't be seeing you anymore till I get back from next summer." And I just looked at him and said, "Would you like to see some videos of your grandson pinning people to the mat?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, I gave him a card and I said, "Write your email address on his card and I'll mail them to you." And his grandson smiled when I did that. Now, I'm not faulting this guy for going to Arizona because it's nice out there. And the winters here aren't any fun. But when I look at number 35, when I ask, what am I doing when I'm making all these videos? I mean, I was telling Jax before class started, that I downloaded the videos from what I thought was a broken hard drive, and it took like 10 hours. I've got videos of my grandson who's a sophomore in high school from back when he was a little kid playing baseball. Oh, my grandson who's a senior in college and going to graduate this year and plays baseball, I've got videos of him from the time he was a little child. And I have videos of him playing college baseball. And guess what I'm going to do when he gets through with his baseball career and he graduates from college? I'm going to go through all of those videos. I don't know how much time it'll take, but I'm going to go through all those videos and put together some disc and like a highlight of his baseball season for each year. Why would I spend all that time doing all that work? Because my contributions to my children and my grandchildren rank as my greatest accomplishments in life. What I do here at Calvary, I love doing it. And I get invitations to go other places in the summer and to go other places to be a visiting professor and do things. But I turn most of those requests down because I make being a father and a grandfather, and right now I make being a grandfather a higher priority than that other stuff. Here's what I tell people. If when my grandkids are grown, I'm still alive and I can do this, then call me and I'll come and do that stuff for you. But I'm not going to sacrifice what I can do for my grandkids just to, what? Minister to a bunch of people in Pennsylvania? Because while I'm gone ministering to them, who's going to minister to my grandson? Who's going to take the videos? And the answer is nobody. You understand? I just have decided that number 35 says that I'm going to focus on the greatest accomplishments, and that is taking care of my children and grandchildren. Number 36, both good marriages and bad marriages have moments of conflict. But in a healthy relationship, the husband and the wife search for answers and areas of agreement because they love each other. Because we love each other, we know we'll have our differences because we're different people. But what are we going to do? Because we love each other, we're going to find answers and areas of agreement. We're going to look for ways to be agreeable, even if we don't always agree on the issues. It's not that big a deal. We'll just go ahead and do it. When we left from watching wrestling on whatever night it was, my wife said, "Can we stop at McDonald's and get something to eat?" And I said, "Sure." And I said, "What do you want?" And she said, "A fish sandwich." $5 for a fish sandwich at McDonald's when you can buy a chicken sandwich for $1. I said, "Okay." And then she said, "How much do they cost?" And I said, $5. She goes, "No." She goes, "That's a lot to spend for a chicken sandwich." I thought, oh, I'm so glad to hear her say that. She said, "Why don't we just get a couple of those breakfast sandwiches, 2 for $4? I said, "That'll work." Now, I wanted to eat a hamburger for $1, but if my wife wanted a breakfast sandwich and she's already given up her fish sandwich, what can I do? I'll not just think about my own appetites, but I'll think about hers and say, I'll eat one of those breakfast sandwiches too. And surprisingly enough, eating a breakfast sandwich at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, it tasted pretty good. But when I got home, I took the receipt out of my pocket. I said, the next time she asks for a fish sandwich, I'm going to buy her one. Does anyone know how you can go on the internet to McDonald's and you can take a survey and they give you a code, you put it on the receipt, and the next time when you go in, you get a buy one, get one free sandwich? So the next time, and I just put that in my car this morning when I left, it's on the sun visor. So the next time we go to watch a wrestling match and she says, "Can I have a fish sandwich?" I'm going to say, "Sure." And then she says, "How much did you say they cost?" I said, "It doesn't matter. I have a coupon for buy one, get one free. And I don't mind paying $2.50 for a fish sandwich. I just don't want to pay $5 for it." So you just have to say, when you're in a marriage, you say, we're going to work together at this thing, and we're going to think about the other person's interest more than our own, and we're just going to try to be agreeable. Number 38, if a husband and wife are deeply committed to Jesus Christ, they enjoy enormous advantages over the family with no spiritual commitment. Is that pretty obvious? Or maybe, you know what? If you grew up in a Christian home, you probably don't know how obvious that is. But when Christ is in your life, if Christ is the Lord of my life, and He's the Lord of my wife's life, and He's prompting each of us to be godly spouses, He's prompting me to be a godly husband and her to be a godly wife, is that an enormous advantage over all the other families in the world? It's pretty obvious it is. So just thank God for that advantage and be sensitive to the Holy Spirit prompting you to do unselfish things. That's what marriage is all about. It helps you learn to be less selfish in life. And it gives you an opportunity to show unconditional love to other people. Your wife, your children, your grandchildren. Number 41. 2 distinct messages must be conveyed to every child during his first 48 months. That's during what? The first 4 years of life? What are the 2 things that a 4-year-old must know? That as a parent, I love you more than you can possibly understand. And 2, because I love you, I have to teach you to be responsible. Now, Dr. Dobson says I have to teach you to obey, but I simply say I have to teach you to be the person that God wants you to be. That's my responsibility. And if I don't do that, then I'm in trouble with my Heavenly Father. Number 46. Is that right? Yeah. Fortunately, we are permitted to make a few mistakes with our children. No one can expect to do everything right. And it's not the few errors that destroy a child, it's the consistent influence of conditions throughout childhood. So I'm going to make mistakes with my children. Didn't your parents make mistakes with you? Now, if they kept making the same mistake over and it becomes a prevailing condition, now we've got a problem that you're going to need some special help to get over. And from a Christian perspective, God can help all of us get over that stuff. We become a new creature in Christ when we're born again, and that gives us a freedom from all that stuff in the past that messes a lot of people's lives up. But if you had perfect parents, can you imagine having perfect parents and being the imperfect person you are? That would be tragic. Your parents make mistakes just like you do. And when you become a parent, you might not make the same mistakes they make, but you'll make some mistakes. It's just part of life, and hopefully you'll learn from that and not just keep repeating them. Number 54. Overcommitted parents, on page 428, overcommitted parents must ask themselves 3 questions about every new activity. A parent who says, I'm just too busy for that, I'm just too busy for that, here are the 3 questions that they need to ask. Is it worthy of our time? Is this a worthwhile thing to do? You say, yes, it is. What will be eliminated if I add this to my life? Going to Pennsylvania in the summer and teaching is a worthwhile thing to do. What will I have to eliminate if I add this to my life? Being at home in the summertime. Well, not for the whole summer, but for a couple of months. Well, that's not going to be any big deal. We'll go up there and do that. Then all of a sudden our children become missionaries over in Russia, where they're only home for the 2 months when we would normally be in Pennsylvania. And what do I have to say to the people in Pennsylvania? Well, I can either say, I'll keep doing this, and my children will be at home in my house on their furlough, and I won't be there. Or I can say, no, I'm going to eliminate this so I can spend time with my children and grandchildren for the 2 months they're here in the summertime. And you just have to make choices in life. There's lots of good things to do, so which are the best things? And what will be its impact on our family life? And how would that impact my family if for the whole 8 years they were over there, I would have been in Pennsylvania every summer? What would that convey to my grandchildren? That probably was a good teacher and he loves teaching, but I mean, can you see how an adolescent grandchild could say, but he loves teaching more than what? He loves me. And knowing, studying human growth and development, and knowing how adolescents think, I just say I make some choices during adolescence that convey to them, he loves me that much. And all you have to do is just do some things to, you can tell them you love them, and you ought to tell them you love them, but then show them you love them too, and say, by making the priority a family. And that was in that book, What Wives Wish Their Husbands Knew About Women. Number 60. See if I'm getting all these right. Yep, number 60. Minor irritants when accumulated over time, may even be more threatening to a marriage than a catastrophic event. If you let minor irritants grow, that means if I'm doing something that irritates my wife, and it just grows and grows and grows, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it starts to weaken the marriage bond. So guess what that means? That means if I know I'm doing something that irritates my wife, it's time to make a change in life and not be such an irritant. Well, she'll just have to learn to put up with me. No, you'll have to learn to strengthen the marriage bond. You follow? You make a decision. What's more important to me? Doing my own thing or making the marriage bond stronger? And of course, if Christ is the Lord of your life, what will be your conclusion? Do we all know the magic formula for joy in a person's life? J stands for Jesus first, O stands for others, and Y stands for yourself last. And if you practice that, you'll be one of the happiest people on the face of the earth. You go, I don't know, it doesn't sound very interesting. No, it doesn't to a mind that's been influenced by the world around us. But what's the Bible say? Don't be conformed to this world. Be transformed by renewing your mind, by thinking God's thoughts and operating differently. Number 68 on page 429. This is the way to be successful in life. Treat every person as you want to be treated. Now, what does that sound like? What Bible verse supports that? Do unto others as what? As you would have them do unto you. And what do we call that precept in Scripture? The golden rule. Did I tell you I was taught the golden rule in my home and we never went to church? And when I got saved and came to Calvary and learned that this was the golden rule, I go, whoa, that's not the same golden rule I was taught. My dad taught me that the guy who has the gold makes the rules. You want to be in charge of the world? You want to make the rules? Then you accumulate the gold. And if you look through history, isn't that pretty much what happens? The guy that has all the gold and the power tells everybody else what to do. But from God's perspective, you want to be successful in life? You treat other people the way you want to be treated. I love the way the Bible talks about employer-employee relationships. If you work for somebody, the Bible says you're supposed to do your work as unto the Lord. And if you're the boss, you're supposed to remember that you also have a boss in heaven that you have to be accountable to. Do you see how if both the supervisor and the employee embraced biblical principles, how it would make for a more harmonious and a better working relationship? And you say, what if I have a boss who doesn't have Jesus as the Lord of his life and all he thinks about is himself? Well, does Jesus say only submit to the good? He says submit to both the good and the bad overseer and do your work as unto the Lord. Treat every person as you want to be treated. Look for ways to meet the needs of other people. Now, see, I don't know about you, but I have a little voice in the back of my head. I don't know where yours is. Some people tell me that theirs is in the pit of their stomach, but mine's in the back of my head. And as soon as I read that, look for ways to meet the needs of other people. There's a little voice in the back of my head that says, as soon as I say that out loud to you, it says, what about your needs, Tommy? Who's going to meet them? Now, where does that little voice come from? From what we studied earlier in this class? That Freudian stuff? From all of that submerged stuff? Well, if that's where it comes from, then the submerged part of my mind is pretty corrupted, isn't it? It's pretty selfish. And it needs to be dealt with. And the answer is, what about your needs, Tom? Are you ready for this? If your focus is to meet the needs of other people, God will meet your needs. And by the way, and the Bible talks about this. You say, what I need is a bunch of people to be friends of mine. Well, what does the Bible say? If you want to have friends, be friendly. So start being friends to people, and then what'll happen when you need a friend to help you? You could call them and they would show up because you've been so helpful to them. But if you're not looking for ways to meet the needs of other people, why would anybody else think about meeting your needs in life? You understand? It's just kind of reaping what you sow kind of stuff going on. Number 85 on page 430. Bitterness and resentment are emotional cancers that rot us from within. Whoa! Bitterness is a cancer that rots us from within. Resentment is a cancer that rots us from within. What are we talking about? Are any of you bitter towards somebody in life about something they did to you 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago? You know what's really sad about this stuff? I one time when I was in a supervisory capacity, I had two employees who couldn't get along working in the same department. So I called them in my office and I said, you know, both of you are nice people from my perspective. And I'm puzzled by why you can't get along with each other. So let's talk about this dynamic of what's going on between the two of you. And they start to talk about it. And one says, well, it just seems like that no matter what I say to this other person, she doesn't trust me. And I said, well, maybe that's a misperception. And so I said, person A said, no matter what I say to her, she doesn't trust me. And that bothers me. Why does she think I'm so untrustworthy? And I said to person B, so maybe that's a faulty perception on her part. When she says things to you, do you trust her or are you suspicious? And she said, you know, 20 years ago, when I was younger, I trusted somebody and they hurt me immensely. And ever since then, I haven't been able to trust anybody, whether I know them or not. So I said to person A, so it's not that she doesn't trust you, it's that she had an experience in life that's affected her so much adversely that she can't trust anybody. And person A says, oh, that's so sad that they hurt her that much. I said, now that you know that, can you not take personal what's going on and just realize that she's carrying some pain from the past? And she goes, and person A said to person B, I'm so sorry. I never knew that about you. And then person B says, well, I'm sorry I've let the past hinder our relationship because you're a nice person. There's no reason why I couldn't trust you. You understand what came out of that? As they started to understand each other, they became good friends and had a good working relationship. But this thing that happened earlier in person B's life, do you understand? Even if you're not bitter about it, and even if you don't resent it, can you understand that painful things from the past, you can pack them around and carry them around, and they can damage your life like a cancer for the rest of your life? And you know what's sad about this? While this woman, person B, is packing around all this pain that interferes with her having good relationships with other people, the person who created that pain in her life isn't even aware of it and doesn't even care. Isn't that sad? That the person who started this whole painful thing happening is so far in the past, probably if she went back and confronted them, they would say, I don't ever remember doing that. And it's like, why would we let someone inflict pain on us and then allow that pain to eat at us like a cancer? Let's just give it to God and let's move on from there. One thing I've done, and this helps when you're older, you see it happening, one thing I've concluded is any painful experience that I remember from my childhood, I ask how God can use that in my life to help me be a better teacher. Because I do have some painful experiences that I remember from being a student in a classroom. And what do you think? I think, okay, when a teacher did this to me, this is how I felt, and I've remembered that all my life. So what do I say to myself as a teacher? So don't do that to students. Don't treat students the way somebody treated you. On the other hand, I was given a seminar one time to a bunch of teachers at a convention about this kind of thing. And one guy said, yeah, but he said, if people did it to me, then I kind of feel like I want to do it to the next generation. Kind of pass it on, toughen them up. I'm going, or are you just doing it because you're selfish? Are you trying to be helpful to people or hurtful to people and looking for an excuse to do it? Number 87, it's been my observation that whatever a person hungers for, Satan will appear to offer it in exchange for a spiritual compromise. Whoa! And that's in his book, Straight Talk to Men. Whatever you hunger for. So guess what I did when I read that one? I said, okay, do any of you guys, when the new cars come out, do you like to go to the car dealership and sit in the brand new car and smell that new car? Does anyone here, does the smell of a new car make your mouth water? One of my son-in-laws said one time to his wife, to one of my daughters, she said, Dad, she laughed. She said, you know what my husband said? And I said, about you? And I said, no telling. What did he say about me this time? And he said, your dad is amazing. He drives these old cars, but they still smell new. Anyone know how I do that? There used to be a car wash in Grandview. I don't know if it's still there or not. But you could take your car up there and have it run it through the car wash, and they would ask you, what smell do you want them to spray in your car? Have you ever had a car wash ask you that? Guess what's one of the options you could choose? New car smell. You could have them spray new car smell in your old car so that you can get in the car and close your eyes and take a whiff of new car smell. But if I go to the dealerships and sit in all those new cars, do you understand what Satan's going to do? He's going to say, you know, Tom, what you need to do is sell that old clunker and buy a new car. And since you're out buying one, I mean, you're deserving of it. You ought to get the classiest model on the lot. Well, if I did that, I would have to get another job to pay the payment on it, and I wouldn't be able to spend time watching my children in sports events, my grandchildren in the evenings. Do you understand? It's like, no, but just Satan will offer an exchange for a spiritual compromise. So watch out for that stuff. Which means I don't go to car shows, and I don't go to car dealerships checking out the new cars. It's just not a healthy exercise for me. Number 99, prescription for a happier, healthier life. It's on page 431. A prescription for a happier, healthier life. Resolve to slow your pace. That is so hard for me. I'm hyperactive. To say no gracefully. And the way I say no gracefully, I have to tell you, I have a problem saying no to people. So I simply say, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm already booked. My calendar's full of other things I have to do. To resist the temptation to chase after more pleasures, more hobbies, social entanglements. Now, I took up fishing a number of years ago. I actually took it up because I had two daughters, and when they were younger, I took my daughters fishing. I still remember this. We're out there at Lake Tacoma in a rented boat, and I'm throwing this lure out in the water. It's called a hula popper, and I'm throwing it out there, and I'm popping it across the water, trying to catch a bass. And I just took the girls with me so we could have some fun together. And they're looking at my toolbox, at my tackle box of all of my lures, and they're going, what's this one do, Dad? And so here's what they said. Can you take that popping one off and put this other one on so we can see what it does? And all they wanted to do was play with the lures. They didn't care if we caught fish or not. They just wanted me to throw them out there and reel them back, and they could laugh at the action they make in the water. And I thought, oh man, this is going nowhere. So obviously I put my fishing on hold and started doing things that were more appealing to my daughters. Building playhouses, going shopping, doing things that they like to do. Then when we had 2 grandsons born, 5 days apart, I said to Nina, I better go to the library and figure out what to do with grandsons. And sure enough, what I found out was that I need to take my grandsons fishing. That's what it said in the library. I thought, aha, I get to take up fishing again. So I started taking it up so I could be practiced when they got old enough to go fishing. And all of a sudden, I found out that going out there and throwing a line out in the water and then reeling it back and having a bass grab it and hook him, I'd start laughing. Fooled you, didn't I? And I'd reel him in and I'd take him off the lure and throw him back in the water. And I found that it bled stress out of my life. And I'm going, whoa, this is so cool. I'm so much more relaxed when I go fishing. So I took up this hobby, and then we went to Alabama to see my wife's sister and her family, and her husband is a bass tournament fisherman. So I said, Gary, can you teach me how to catch bass? And he took me out and showed me how to catch them. I came back for a whole year and caught bass every time I went fishing. And so then the next summer, we go back down there, and I say, Gary, can you teach me how to catch big bass? And we go out in his boat, and he's a bass fisherman, tournament. His boat costs more than my house does. We go out in his boat, and we're throwing up against the shore, catching big bass. And on the way back from Alabama, I said, Nina, I need to go get me a boat. She goes, oh no, I was afraid this would happen. And I said, I'm not talking like Gary has. I'm not talking about a boat like that. I'm talking about one of these little plastic boats with a little trolling motor on it that you haul in the back of your pickup and slide it out in the water. Oh, she said. Oh, well, she said, what do they cost? And I said, well, less than $1,000 for the whole rig. Oh, she says. Oh, but you understand, to where if I'm not careful, my hobby that serves a real purpose in my life, to bleeding off stress and gives me something to do with my grandsons, could also become such a fixation that it interferes with other things. In fact, when I was a Sunday school teacher in church and I had taken up fishing, one of my Sunday school class members said, well, Tom, it looks like we're not going to see you some of these Sundays. You'll be calling in a substitute. And I said, for what? They said, because when you wake up on Sunday morning and it's perfect bass fishing weather and it hasn't been good weather for 2 weeks, you'll call a sub and go bass fishing instead of teach your Sunday school class. No, I wouldn't do that. You know how many times that actually happened, that I was tempted to do it? You understand? If the devil finds out this is a pleasurable thing for you, then he'll use it against you. And I thought, now I know what he's talking about. Did I ever skip teaching Sunday school to go bass fishing? Not on your life. I knew where my priorities were, so I just operated accordingly. Number 101, it's impossible to overstate the need for prayer in the fabric of the family life. You just need to pray constantly. Number 107, the greatest delusion, on page 432, the greatest delusion is to suppose that our children will be devout Christians simply because their parents have been devout Christians. We need to do our part to evangelize our children just like we want to evangelize other people in the world. Make Christianity appealing to our children and our grandchildren. Number 109, if a woman is to have the contentment and self-satisfaction necessary to produce a successful family, she needs the constant support and respect of the man she loves. What does she need from me? She needs me to tell her how to cook, how to raise children, how to run a vacuum cleaner, how to do this, how to do that. Is that what Dobson said? What does she need? She needs me telling her how to do things so she'll do it right? No, what does she need? She needs my constant support and respect. I support her in her chosen way of doing things. Now it happens that I'm into time and motion stuff. I'm into efficiency. So does this surprise you that my wife doesn't always do things the most efficient way? Now, does she need me to show her how to be more efficient, or does she need me to be supportive and respectful of her chosen way of doing things? She needs you got this, guys? She needs your support and respect. And the rest of the stuff will take care of itself. If she wants your help, she'll ask for it. And by the way, when my wife used to be a librarian and a study hall supervisor in a Christian school, when our kids were going to Christian school, that's how we paid the tuition, as she worked there. And when she would come home from school and tell me about a problem in school, was she telling me about that problem so that I could tell her how to fix it? No, she was telling me about that problem so I could be what? What are those two words? Supportive and respectful. And supportive is, well, I'll just give you a big hug. We'll just go out to eat so you don't have to fix supper tonight. You understand? So you can deal with this. And you know what? And the guy who isn't respecting you, I'll come up to the school and teach him some respect. I'll go talk to this little turkey about the way he's treating my girlfriend. And he needs to change the way he's treating her. Or I'll be in the study hall sitting next to him every day. And I was supporting her and respect her myself, and then teaching others to respect her as well. In fact, with children, if your wife tells your kids to do something and you don't think it's that big a deal, don't argue with her. Be supportive. You say to the kids, what'd your mom tell you to do? Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. Hey, don't disrespect your mother. You understand? If I'm teaching my children, if I'm supportive of what my wife decides with the kids, no matter what, and I teach my children to respect her, and if they see me respecting her, that's going to go a long way. And what does she do when I give them some directive that she thinks is a little over the edge? It's not the directive that matters. It's what? The support and respect. It just makes for healthy marriages. Well, aren't you glad Dr. Dobson's book was one of them we used in this class? And it looks like we're finished, except for getting all your work done. And all I can say is, have a good time, have a good day, and have a good break between now and next semester.